Noah woke up early the next morning, the weight of his new mission pressing heavily on his chest yet filling him with a strange sense of determination that refused to fade. He knew today was important because today he would finally talk to the two people he trusted more than anyone outside his family, his closest friends, Daniel and Maya. By afternoon the sun had turned soft and golden, casting warm light across the city, and Noah made his way to the quiet cafe where they had agreed to meet. His steps were steady, but his heart was restless, beating like someone preparing for a confession he had held inside for too long. As he entered the cafe, the rich aroma of fresh coffee welcomed him, and he spotted them at their usual table, Daniel with his calm, analytical expression and Maya smiling with her usual warmth, though both faces shifted quickly into concern when they saw the bandage marks still fading on Noah's arms and the exhaustion lingering in his eyes. They hugged him tightly, holding him longer than normal, because they both knew something was deeply wrong. After settling into their seats, Noah finally began speaking, not fast, but slowly, painfully, letting each memory rise from the dark place inside him where it had been buried since he escaped the jungle. He told them everything, the deadly silence of the forest, the strange shadows that had chased him, the night he almost died, the creatures whose eyes glowed like burning coals, the narrow escape, the storm, the fall, the hunger, and the endless fear. As he spoke, his voice cracked multiple times, and Daniel's hands instinctively clenched the table while Maya wiped silent tears from her eyes, unable to imagine what he had lived through. Noah didn't leave anything out, not the terror, not the discoveries, not the secrets, not even the moments when he thought he was hallucinating from exhaustion. When he finally finished recounting his journey, the cafe around them felt quieter, as though even the world was stunned by what it had just heard. They sat in silence for a long minute, absorbing everything, and then Noah took a deep breath and said the words that shocked them both, "I'm going back." Daniel's head lifted sharply while Maya's breath froze mid-air, their shocked eyes meeting Noah's unwavering ones. Noah explained that this time he wasn't going blindly, this time he had a full plan, research, maps, strategy, survival equipment lists, and clear objectives. He wasn't returning to risk his life, he was returning to uncover the truth that had nearly killed him. He laid out the reasons, the signs he had seen, the mysteries left unsolved, the strange humming energy deep inside that jungle, the creatures that weren't in any scientific record, and the hidden passages that suggested the forest wasn't just a forest but something ancient, forgotten, and extraordinary. Daniel was the first to respond, leaning back slowly, processing the information with the logical mind he was known for, telling Noah he understood the curiosity but reminding him that they were talking about a place capable of killing a person in minutes. But Noah didn't back down. He told them that danger didn't erase purpose and that someone needed to uncover what was hidden inside that jungle. Slowly, carefully, he shifted the conversation toward what he truly wanted. He asked them to come with him, not as followers but as partners, as the two people he trusted to have his back when the world turned dark. Maya looked emotionally torn, her eyes soft with fear but also with loyalty, and Daniel rubbed his forehead, torn between logic and friendship. Noah leaned forward and promised them that this time everything would be different. Because he knew what to expect. He described the new gear he planned to take: satellite trackers, advanced lights, emergency meds, communication tools, survival tents, ropes, flare guns, everything professional explorers carried. He showed them the diagrams he had drawn, the paths he planned to follow, the places where he nearly died and how he would avoid them this time. Slowly, their resistance shifted into thought, and thought began shifting into consideration. Maya asked why this mission was so important, and Noah told her the truth, because he felt like the jungle had unfinished business with him, like it had shown him only a fraction of what it truly was. Daniel asked if Noah was sure he wasn't acting out of trauma, and Noah told him that he had never been clearer about anything in his life. For almost 2 hours, the discussion went back and forth, fear versus curiosity, safety versus truth, logic versus instinct, and through it all Noah remained steady, confident, determined. his voice strong but full of pleading sincerity. By the time their coffees had gone cold, both friends realized something undeniable: Noah was going back no matter what, and the only question was whether he would go alone or with them. Eventually, Daniel sighed, leaning forward, placing his hand over Noah's, and said, "If you're really doing this, then you're not doing it alone." Maya nodded slowly with tears in her eyes and whispered, "I'll come too, but promise me you won't die on us." Noah smiled, relieved, grateful, emotional, and squeezed their hands tightly, promising them that this time they would not only survive but discover something the world had never seen. As they stood up to leave, the sun had already set, and the cafe lights gave the scene a warm glow. For the first time since returning home, Noah felt whole again, not because his fear was gone, but because he wasn't facing it alone anymore. Noah left the cafe with a heavy heart but a determined mind, and as he walked down the dimly lit street, the weight of everything he had shared with Daniel and Maya settled deeper into his chest, yet somehow gave him strength. He knew the next step was the hardest. He had to talk to his wife, Aisha, and explain what he was planning, not as a wild emotional idea but as a structured decision he had thought about for months. So that night when he finally reached home, Aisha opened the door with a gentle smile, unaware of the storm inside him, and Noah felt a lump rise in his throat as she hugged him tightly, her hands tracing the fading scars on his back the way someone touches memories carved into skin. She asked softly how the meeting went, but Noah dodged the question, instead sitting down on the sofa while she brought tea, and once she settled beside him, he took her hands into his trembling ones and finally spoke, telling her that the past months had been healing but also haunting. That every night he still woke up gasping from the nightmares of the jungle, the cries of distant animals, the suffocating darkness, and the loneliness, and as he described these things, Aisha's eyes filled with worry, her fingers tightening on his as she whispered that he was finally safe and didn't need to think about any of that again. But Noah slowly shook his head and said, "I have to go back, not because I want the danger, but because I need answers." And she stared at him, stunned. Whispering back, "Noah, you just survived once, why again?" But he explained carefully that he wasn't going alone, that Daniel and Maya had agreed to join him, that this time they would take tools, satellite communication, first aid kits, flare guns, rope sets, water purifiers, mapping gear, and a complete checklist of everything he had learned from the first time. And while he spoke, Aisha's expression kept shifting between shock, fear, anger, and disbelief, but mostly fear, because she had lived those months thinking she'd lost her husband forever, and now the idea of losing him again felt unbearable. So she stood up and walked to the window, trying to control her trembling voice as she said, "Noah, why can't you just stay here with us? With me, with the kids?" And Noah followed her, placing his hand gently on her arm, telling her that this wasn't just an adventure, it was a responsibility, a closure he never got, a truth he needed to face, and more importantly, something inside him felt connected to that place, as if the jungle had become a part of him, a chapter he had to finish. And when she turned to face him, tears streaming silently, she whispered, "What if you don't return this time?" And Noah swallowed hard because he knew the fear was real and reasonable, but he said softly, "Then at least I will be lost while doing something that matters to me, not running from the shadows inside my own mind." And that broke her, her legs giving out as she sat on the couch, covering her face, and Noah sat beside her, pulling her into his arms, holding her while she cried silently into his chest. And after a long time, when she finally calmed, she looked at him with eyes full of pain but also love and said, "Then promise me 2 things, you will prepare properly, and you will come back." And Noah held her face gently and said, "I promise I will try with everything I have." And that was the closest she could come to letting him go. Later that night when the kids came into the room laughing, Noah hugged them tighter than usual, feeling the weight of the journey he was planning. And after dinner, when the house grew quiet and Aisha went to put the kids to sleep, Noah sat alone on the balcony, opening his old notebook. The one he had filled with notes during his first survival, torn pages filled with dirt stains, panic thoughts, sketches of strange plants, and memories he had tried to forget, and he read every page slowly, each line taking him back deeper into the forest that had nearly killed him but also taught him strength he never knew he had. In the silence of the night, he made a list of everything they needed for the second expedition, from survival gear to emergency weapons, from satellite phones to solar chargers, from antivenom shots to thermal blankets. And he wrote names under each item. Daniel would handle the navigation gear, Maya would organize medical supplies, and he would handle the communication devices and field equipment. The list grew long but organized, and Noah felt a strange excitement mixed with fear fill his chest, a feeling he hadn't felt since before the crash. Finally, Aisha joined him again, sitting beside him quietly, watching his determination and knowing she could never change his heart, only support him enough to keep him steady, and she rested her head on his shoulder, whispering, "Just come back to us, don't let that jungle take you again." And Noah kissed her forehead, promising he would fight harder than ever. And as the night deepened and the house grew silent, Noah finally realized this wasn't just his journey anymore. It was becoming the beginning of something larger, something he would face not as a lost survivor, but as a prepared man returning with strength, knowledge, and a team that believed in him. And with that thought, he closed his notebook and whispered to himself, "This time, I'm ready." Noah woke up early the next morning, long before the sun had fully risen, his mind still heavy with the emotional conversations from the previous night, and as he sat at the edge of his bed rubbing his tired eyes, he could hear the faint sounds of his family preparing breakfast in the kitchen, a warm reminder of the life he had almost lost in the jungle, yet even that comfort couldn't settle the restless fire burning inside him. The urge to go back, to understand why fate had taken him through such a dangerous wilderness and then spared him, and why he still felt unfinished, as if his story demanded a second chapter. He stood up, washed his face, and looked at himself in the mirror, still thin, pale scars on his arms, a deep one across his shoulder, eyes slightly sunken but holding a strange glow of determination, and he whispered to himself, "I will finish what began there." After dressing, he walked toward the living room where his wife, Aisha, was putting plates on the table and his 2 children were half asleep, rubbing their eyes and yawning. The moment they saw him, their faces softened with warmth, and Noah forced a smile as he joined them, though his mind was already racing ahead. After breakfast, Noah stepped into his small home office, the same place where he had spent years writing notes, researching, and editing his travel journals before the crash changed everything. Now, he opened his laptop and began typing a new document, Project Return. He started listing everything he remembered, the jungle routes, the river path, the old hut where he hid, the pack of animals that chased him, the areas where he found fruits, and most importantly, the possible location of the plane wreck. Hours passed as he worked tirelessly, switching between maps, satellite images, and handwritten notes from his notebook. He knew the terrain was unpredictable, but he also knew that understanding the layout could save lives this time. After some time, he called his friend Asha, who had been with him through many small adventures before but wasn't on the ill-fated flight. Asha picked up immediately, surprised to hear Noah's voice so early, and Noah told him everything, how he survived, why he felt the need to return, and what he hoped to discover. There was a long silence on the call before Asha finally said, "If you're truly going back, then you won't go alone. I'm with you, no matter what." The support hit Noah harder than he expected, and his voice trembled slightly as he thanked his friend. After the call, Noah reached out to Zara, Asha's cousin and an experienced wildlife photographer who had once traveled to remote forests for documentaries. She answered with her usual energy, but the moment Noah mentioned Amazon and returning, her tone shifted into serious focus. Noah explained that he didn't want to relive trauma but rather face it with preparation, gather evidence, document real survival tactics, and maybe help others understand the dangers of such remote areas. Zara listened carefully and then said, "You'll need a medic, a navigator, and a survival kit specialist. I can help you prepare everything, but only if you're ready to face everything you left behind." Noah felt his heart tighten, because he was ready, but he also knew he was dragging people into a path soaked in danger. After hanging up, he stepped outside to the small backyard of his house, where the winter breeze brushed against his skin. He closed his eyes and felt again the jungle's thick humid air, the overwhelming smell of damp soil, and the haunting sounds of animals that stalked him through the night. He opened his eyes and breathed out heavily. It was time to speak to the most important person in his life, Aisha. He walked back inside and found her in the living room, folding blankets. She looked up with soft eyes, sensing the seriousness of his expression before he even spoke. He sat next to her and took her hand gently, explaining everything, from Aisha's support to Zara's involvement to his deep feeling that something unfinished was calling him back. Aisha's heart clenched, fear filling her chest as she remembered the days when Noah was missing, the night she cried while looking at the silent phone, praying for news, and the moment she learned he had been found barely alive. She could not imagine losing him again, but she could also see the pain in his eyes, the way he still woke up sweating from nightmares, the way he stared at the forest documentaries with a trembling jaw, and she realized that if she stopped him, he might break slowly from the inside. Tears welled in her eyes as she whispered, "If you go, promise me you will come back, promise me this time you are not alone and not unprepared." Noah held her hands even tighter, his voice steady as he answered, "This time, I go with knowledge, with people, with tools, and with every lesson that nearly killed me. I will come back." Aisha leaned forward and hugged him tightly, her tears dampening his shirt, and though fear still filled her heart, she nodded. Later that evening, Noah gathered his notebook, laptop, and map sheets across the dining table, turning the whole room into a planning station. Aisha arrived shortly after, dropping a backpack full of survival gear manuals, and Zara joined via video call, giving them a list of essential tools, flares, satellite phones, emergency rations, multi-use blades, thermal blankets, waterproof tents, portable water purifiers, and fire starter kits. Aisha joked lightly to ease the tension, saying, "This time, we will be the ones prepared, not the jungle," and though the comment made everyone smile, they all knew the dangers lurking ahead. The night grew darker as they continued planning, adjusting routes, checking supply lists, and preparing mentally for a journey that could either bring closure or crack open old wounds. When Noah finally went to bed, the house quiet and still, he stared at the ceiling and whispered, "This time, I finish the story." And for the first time since escaping the Amazon, he felt both fear and strength inside him, the strange but powerful combination that told him he was finally ready to return, not as a victim, but as a survivor choosing his path. After the intense discussions with his friends, Noah returned home with a mixture of anticipation and anxiety swirling in his mind. The familiar surroundings of his living room felt almost alien now, tinged with the memories of his harrowing survival in the jungle, yet also infused with a strange sense of purpose. His wife greeted him warmly at the door, worry etched into her features, but her eyes softened with relief when she saw him walking in despite the visible scars and fatigue marking his face and hands. Noah carefully removed his backpack, placing it on the floor, and sat down at the worn wooden table that had been his workstation for years. He poured himself a glass of water, the cool liquid offering a momentary solace to his parched throat, and exhaled deeply, allowing the lingering tension to ebb away, though only slightly. Across from him, his wife listened intently as Noah began recounting the events of the past months, the crash, the dark nights filled with the haunting sounds of unknown creatures, the relentless search for water and food, the injuries that had slowed him down, and the moments when he thought survival was impossible. Each word he spoke seemed to materialize the dangers he had faced, the blood-stained leaves, the jagged rocks, the suffocating canopy above, and the strange creatures that had guided, attacked, or simply observed him silently from the shadows. His wife reached out, placing a comforting hand on his arm, her touch grounding him in the present, reminding him of the safety and warmth of home, yet also fueling the drive that had been steadily growing inside him. She listened patiently as Noah unfolded the layers of his experiences, describing the resilience he had discovered within himself, the subtle intelligence required to understand and anticipate the behaviors of unknown animals, the improvisation needed to create shelters, and anticipate the behaviors of unknown animals, the improvisation needed to create shelters, and the countless strategies he had employed to survive while navigating uncharted territory. His stories were interspersed with sketches he had made of the jungle's topography, notes on the flora and fauna he encountered, and diagrams of improvised tools and traps that had kept him alive. Every detail was meticulously recorded, his handwriting jagged in places from fatigue but precise in intent, capturing the essence of each challenge he had faced. As he spoke, his wife's expression shifted between awe, concern, and admiration, her mind absorbing the gravity of the situations he had endured, understanding the strength required to not only survive but to think clearly under such extreme conditions. Later, Noah retrieved his notebook filled with scribbled plans for the next expedition, showing her how he intended to revisit the jungle with a more prepared approach, this time bringing his closest friends along. He described the equipment they would need, the mapping of areas they would attempt to explore, and the safety measures he had devised based on his prior experiences. His words were a mix of tactical reasoning and cautious excitement, emphasizing that while the danger was still present, knowledge and preparation could mitigate the worst risks. His wife asked questions, probed concerns, and suggested modifications, her insight reflecting a deep understanding of both the physical and emotional toll such an adventure could exert. Together, they debated routes, emergency protocols, and communication methods, ensuring that no decision was made without careful consideration. Noah then turned to his personal journal, showing pages filled with reflections on fear, hope, and the lessons he had learned about both nature and human perseverance. He spoke of the moments of isolation when he felt utterly alone, juxtaposed with the times he discovered unexpected alliances, whether with curious creatures or with serendipitous circumstances that seemed almost orchestrated by fate. He recounted the nights when rain pelted down through the dense canopy, soaking him to the bone, yet the sight of a small fire made from damp wood and clever ingenuity renewed his faith in survival. The discussions lasted well into the night, the room illuminated by a single warm lamp, casting shadows on the walls that flickered with the intensity of his storytelling. Noah paused often, reflecting on his emotional state, acknowledging that while he had survived the past ordeal, the psychological weight remained, and he was determined to confront it openly with his friends and family. By the time the conversation shifted towards practical logistics, packing lists, travel routes, and survival equipment, the energy in the room was a blend of anticipation, nervous excitement, and solemn understanding of the dangers that lay ahead. His wife, initially apprehensive, now looked at him with quiet pride, realizing that this journey was more than an expedition into the jungle, it was a journey into the depths of human resilience, friendship, and trust. She agreed to support him fully, ensuring he would be mentally prepared and emotionally grounded before the group departed. As midnight approached, Noah finalized a rough schedule for the coming weeks, mapping out training sessions, resource preparation, and detailed reconnaissance to minimize risks. Each plan was weighed against potential hazards, from unpredictable weather to encounters with aggressive wildlife, and Noah emphasized that the success of this new expedition relied heavily on teamwork, awareness, and discipline. With his wife's reassurance, he felt a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that his survival had not only been a testament to his own endurance but also a foundation upon which this new journey could be built. The night ended with both of them quietly reviewing the notes, marking action items, and reflecting on the journey so far, fully aware that the road ahead would demand courage, adaptability, and unwavering commitment. Noah's thoughts lingered on the jungle, the unknown, and the friends who would soon join him, feeling a mixture of dread and excitement that only those who truly love adventure could understand. Every scar, every sleepless night, and every risk taken had led to this point, the preparation for a greater journey, a calculated return to the wilderness, and a promise to explore, document, and survive together with trusted companions. With the lamp's glow fading and the city outside silent, Noah finally allowed himself a brief moment of rest, the weight of the past and the anticipation of the future settling into a determined calm, readying himself for the challenges that lay ahead, fully aware that the expedition would test them all in ways unimaginable but also solidifying the bonds that only shared adversity could forge. Noah spent the early morning meticulously organizing his notes and survival plans, his scarred hands carefully flipping through the pages of his detailed journal, the sunlight streaming through the window casting soft, warm rays on his determined face. Each diagram of the jungle, each sketch of the creatures he had encountered, and every annotation about improvised shelters, foraging techniques, and dangerous terrain was reviewed multiple times, as if he were reliving the entire harrowing experience in his mind. His wife, standing nearby, watched him with a mixture of awe and concern, occasionally asking questions that made him pause and reflect on the challenges he had faced, but he reassured her with a calm confidence that they could manage the expedition safely this time. After breakfast, he began laying out the equipment he planned to take: first aid kits, sturdy ropes, lightweight cooking utensils, and specialized gear that he had painstakingly acquired based on his observations from the jungle, each piece carefully packed and categorized. He then moved on to digital preparations, reviewing satellite maps of the remote areas he intended to explore, marking regions that had been inaccessible during his previous journey and plotting alternative routes in case of unexpected obstacles. Meanwhile, his two close friends, one a skilled tracker and the other a biologist with a knack for improvisation, arrived at his home, greeted warmly by his wife and invited to sit at the wooden dining table, where sketches, maps, and notebooks were spread out like a strategic war plan. Noah began explaining, in painstaking detail, every peril he had faced, the turbulence that had caused the crash, the dense foliage that had concealed the forest floor, the river crossings that had nearly swept him away, and the encounters with unknown creatures that had tested both his courage and intellect. His friends listened intently, their expressions a mixture of shock, curiosity, and admiration, as Noah described the creatures he had seen, some with iridescent scales glimmering in the sunlight, others with muscular forms and eyes that glowed eerily in the dark underbrush. He detailed how he had survived on limited food, how he had used natural remedies to treat wounds, and how he had navigated by observing the sun, stars, and terrain, making each story vivid with gestures and occasional drawings in his notebook. His friends, inspired yet slightly anxious, began asking questions, wanting to know exactly what tools would be needed, what animals they might encounter, and how to handle unforeseen emergencies. Noah patiently outlined the protocols: how to set traps, purify water, identify edible plants, and avoid the more dangerous species, how to use improvised shelters during storms, how to signal for help if separated, and how to ration supplies efficiently. Later in the afternoon, the group shifted focus to logistics, travel arrangements, emergency contacts, communication devices, and contingency plans. They debated which routes were safer, which supplies were indispensable, and how to optimize the carrying load for each person. Noah emphasized teamwork, illustrating with a few scenarios from his previous journey where collaboration had saved his life, and explaining that patience, observation, and careful planning would be the key to success. The friends nodded, their resolve strengthening as they understood the gravity and potential adventure that awaited them. As evening fell, Noah prepared a simple dinner for the three of them, cooking over a small portable stove while recounting lighter, more personal anecdotes from his time in the jungle, the humorous missteps, the moments of wonder at discovering rare flora, and the awe-inspiring sunrise he had witnessed atop a ridge after a long night of hardship. His friends laughed, asked questions, and occasionally marveled at his resilience, absorbing both the practical knowledge and the emotional depth of the experience. After dinner, they gathered around a flickering lamp, reviewing the equipment checklist once more, marking off items that were ready and noting supplies that still needed to be acquired. Noah's wife, observing the group's camaraderie, smiled with quiet pride, realizing how her husband's ordeal had transformed him into not just a survivor but a meticulous planner and a natural leader. Before heading to bed, Noah spent a few moments alone by the window, looking up at the stars and reflecting on the journey ahead, knowing that while he had survived the forest once, the real challenge was to lead his friends safely through the unknown. With maps laid out on the table, supplies packed, and minds aligned, the team felt a cautious but growing excitement, the anticipation of returning to the wild filled with both wonder and trepidation. Every detail mattered: the weight of the backpacks, the sharpness of knives, the sturdiness of tents, the reliability of flashlights, and the clarity of mental preparation. Noah meticulously checked each item again, his hands moving with practiced precision, a calm determination in his eyes. The evening ended with quiet discussion, planning the departure time, estimating travel duration, and reviewing survival strategies, ensuring that everyone was mentally and physically prepared for the days ahead. Exhausted but focused, they finally settled into a restless sleep, dreams mingling with memories of the jungle, the unknown creatures, and the challenges they had survived, and the adventure that was about to begin anew. Noah, lying awake for a few moments, mentally rehearsed scenarios, imagined possible dangers, and planned contingencies, ensuring that no detail was overlooked. The night passed, quiet except for the occasional rustle of wind outside, and as the first rays of dawn illuminated the room, the group stirred with anticipation, ready to take the first steps of a new expedition, guided by Noah's experience, insight, and unwavering determination.